This happened 5 years ago. I was 32 and just a few weeks into my night shift at a national park. I thought I could handle it. I loved being outdoors at night. Most evenings were calm, and I enjoyed the peace. But something about those hours felt different. The park was massive. Thick woods, tall pines, and endless trails. My tiny cabin near the entrance felt safe during the day, but at night, it turned eerie. One night, I set out to check the campsites like usual. The wind howled softly through the trees. I shook it off as just nature. Around midnight, I got a radio call about strange lights flickering behind campsite 4. I figured it was just careless campers trying to have fun. I grabbed my flashlight. Something felt off, but I brushed it aside. As I walked through the woods, the light from my flashlight flickered against the tree trunks. My heart raced. Was that a noise? I paused. The wind picked up, rustling through the underbrush. I listened closely. All I could hear was my breathing. I reached campsite 4. The area was dark and still, no signs of life. I looked around, squinting into the shadows, just the cold, biting air. I felt silly for being concerned, but that nagging feeling wouldn't leave. Over the nights that followed, the calls kept coming. The lights got closer each time I went out. They felt like they were watching me. I grew used to the strange voices that whispered through the trees. They were off. I stood frozen at times, scanning the dark. My heart hammered. I told myself it was just the wind or an animal, but deep down it felt different. One evening I noticed bright lights glowing beyond the trees. I went to check it out, more curious than scared. The closer I got, the more my stomach knotted. The lights pulsed oddly, like they had a life of their own. I thought about turning back, but something pulled me forward. Then I caught a glimpse of movement at the edge of the light. My breath caught. I was sure I saw a figure dart between the trees. I called out, "Hello?" But silence replied. Chills ran down my spine. Something was wrong. I felt a weight in my chest as I turned to leave. I reached for my radio, but before I could speak, I froze. A voice came from behind me, whispering something I couldn't understand. I turned quickly. Nobody was there. My heart raced. I wanted to scream, but no sound came out. I stumbled backward, catching another flash of light in the distance. I felt pulled. Were they welcoming or warning me? The lights flickered again, more vibrant this time. I sensed they were alive, watching and waiting. I turned around, heart pounding, and ran back to the cabin. I didn't look back, though the calls echoed in my ears. That night I locked the door tightly, but I knew I couldn't escape what was out there in the dark, waiting for me to return. The next evening I couldn't shake the feeling of dread. I paced my cabin, glancing at the clock. Midnight approached and I was already on edge. I couldn't let fear win. I had a job to do, but every fiber in me screamed to stay inside. I decided I needed answers. If I was going to report those lights, I had to know what I was dealing with. I grabbed my radio and flashlight again and stepped outside. The chill hit me like a wave, and the familiar noise of the park enveloped me. But beneath the usual sounds, I felt a tension in the air, a whisper of something that felt alive. As I walked towards campsite 4, I heard my own footsteps echo in the silence. I stopped. The wind was silent for a moment, then picked up again. But it sounded different. Hushed. Almost as if it was straining to keep a secret. I reached the clearing where the lights had been. This time I felt drawn to the edge of the woods, toward the pulsing that I had felt before. Hesitantly, I stepped closer, and that's when I heard it. A low hum, humming in rhythm with the lights. I squinted into the darkness, my pulse matching the soft rhythm of the sound. Something moved in the shadows. I froze, panic setting in. Out of the corner of my eye, I saw flashes, quick and chaotic like lightning strikes, behind the trees. I turned to run back, but then I noticed a faint glow, brighter and closer than before, peeking through the branches. I called out, my voice trembling. "Anyone there?" No answer came, only the humming grew louder. The light flickered behind me. I turned to look. A figure emerged, a shape, not quite human, shining as if illuminated from within. It looked at me, and I felt a strange connection, like it was studying me just as much as I was studying it. Then it spoke. Not with words, but through thoughts and feelings. I felt it seep into my mind, a sweet melancholic sensation. It beckoned me forward like an old friend, but my instincts screamed at me to run. I wanted to scream, but I stood frozen. The figure stretched out an elongated arm towards me, fingers that seemed to dance with light. I wanted to reach back, but fear held me in place. I stumbled backward, my foot catching on a root, and I fell. When I hit the ground, the light dimmed. The whispering silence returned. The figure vanished just as quickly as it had appeared. I lay there, breaths coming quick. It felt like the air had changed, heavier, filled with unseen eyes. Finally, I pushed myself to my feet and bolted back to the cabin, slamming the door behind me. It was only then that I noticed something cold and clammy dripping from my fingers. My flashlight beam caught it. A slick, silver substance. That's when I realized it wasn't just my imagination. Something was out there, something real, and it wanted me to understand. My heart raced. I couldn't shake the feeling that this was only the beginning. Whatever had called me in the dark, it wasn't finished yet. The next morning, I was still shaken. I couldn't focus on my tasks, replaying the encounter in my mind. I washed my hands repeatedly, trying to scrub away that silver substance, but it clung to me, a reminder of what happened. I needed to speak to someone about this. The park had a small staff, and I figured one of the rangers might have seen something similar. At breakfast, I found Mark. He was an old-timer, known for his easygoing nature and stories of the park's history. As I recounted the tale of the lights and the figure, his expression shifted from amusement to concern. "You're not the first to see them," he said quietly. "Others have talked about shadows between the trees, strange hums. It's been happening for years." I felt a chill crawl up my spine. "Why hasn't anyone mentioned it? I could have prepared." Mark leaned in, lowering his voice. "Most don't believe it. They chalk it up to imagination, but I've seen things in these woods that don't sit right. Once I found an old campsite, wasn't marked on any map, and the air felt wrong, thick, like something was watching." I swallowed hard. "Where was it?" He hesitated, his eyes narrowing. "Near the creek, but I wouldn't go there alone if I were you." That settled it. I had to go. If there was any chance of finding answers, I needed to see that campsite. I finished my breakfast, my heart pounding with determination. Mark's warnings echoed in my head, but curiosity gnawed at my fear. I grabbed my pack, stuffing it with essentials, including my radio. As I stepped outside, the sun was shining, but a dark cloud seemed to hover over my thoughts. I took the trail toward the creek, feeling every crackle of twigs beneath my boots. The woods looked different in daylight, yet there was a pressure, an awareness like the trees held their breath. When I reached the creek, the sound of running water filled the air, a stark contrast to the whispers from the night before. I followed the bank, scanning for any sign of the campsite. The forest felt dense here. Shadows stretched longer, and I could hear the rustling of leaves. Was it just the wind? Then I saw it. A clearing, slightly overgrown but unmistakably a campsite. I stepped inside and my breath hitched. Old fire rings and worn-down benches lay scattered. But that wasn't all. There were strange markings on the trees surrounding the area, symbols I didn't recognize. They looked almost like the finger movements of the figure from the night before. I pulled out my radio, my hands shaking. "Mark, I'm at the campsite," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. "There are strange symbols here. I think something happened here." Silence buzzed back at me. "Mark, do you copy?" Just then I heard it, a low hum resonating through the air again. I turned slowly, feeling my pulse quicken. I wasn't alone. The unmistakable feeling crept back, that I was being watched. I strained my ears, the hum growing louder, the symbols almost seeming to swirl with energy. Then everything went cold. I turned back to the campsite entrance, and that's when I saw it. A flicker of light between the trees. Too familiar. A figure was waiting, and this time, I wouldn't be able to run. I felt my breath freeze in my lungs. The figure stood at the edge of the trees, bathed in an odd glow that seemed to pulsate. Every instinct screamed at me to turn and run, but my feet felt rooted to the ground. It was the same silhouette as before, but this time, it was clearer. The features were indistinct, hidden in the shifting shadows and the light that flickered around them. "Mark?" I called into the radio, my voice trembling. No response. I carefully took a step back, keeping my eyes locked on the apparition. It didn't move, just watched, as if testing my reaction. Then the hum shifted. It transitioned from a low drone to a series of sharp notes, almost harmonious, yet deeply unsettling. I couldn't shake the feeling that it was trying to communicate. My skin prickled as I recalled Mark's warnings. This was not just a natural phenomenon. Whatever was happening, it was deliberate. I grabbed the radio again, desperate. "Mark, I think I need help. There's something here." Before I could finish, the figure lifted its arm, and the air grew thick around me. Suddenly, I saw the symbols on the trees glow with a vibrant light, and the pressure intensified. My head spun as the world blurred. "Don't move!" I shouted, instinct fighting to keep me still. My voice echoed into the trees, a plea now, not an order. As if in response, the figure moved a step closer. The clarity in its form began to sharpen, and I caught glimpses of elements that felt familiar yet otherworldly. I felt disoriented, as if the very landscape around me was altering with every pulse of the hum. "Get back!" My voice was filled with more fear than I had ever felt before. I wanted to flee, yet my feet remained cemented to the ground. I couldn't take my eyes off the light or the figure that was so intent on me. Then almost imperceptibly, the clearing became alive. Branches swayed, whispering in a language I couldn't understand. The earth beneath me thrummed as if awakening from a long sleep. The very forest was urging me to flee, but the inexplicable pull of the figure held me captive. Suddenly, the humming swelled in intensity, reverberating through my chest. I felt something change in the air, like a shift had occurred. A thin veil had been lifted. The figure pointed directly at me, and in that moment, something inside snapped. I charged at the campsite exit, heart racing, moving before I even processed what I was doing. But as I broke through the tree line, I stumbled. The sudden light from the clearing dimmed behind me, but the air felt undeniably charged. I chanced a glance back. That was when I noticed the campsite was gone. Instead of the clearing, there was nothing but dense forest. My heart dropped. I didn't just run into the woods, I had bolted into the unknown. I fumbled with my radio, hot desperation coursing through me. "Mark, where are you?" Silence, then a crackle. "I'm on my way, just hold tight." But was it really Mark or something else? An icy hand gripped my spine as I suddenly felt the pressure again, the weight of eyes studying me from all directions. I turned, heart pounding, scanning the trees. And that's when I heard it, breath, a whisper in the silence. It was close, I wasn't alone. I turned slowly, heart racing as the breath faded into the rustle of leaves. The shadows began to stretch and swirl, blurring the outlines of the trees. My mind raced with questions. Who was out here with me? Was it real? Or just another trick my mind was playing? I strained my ears, trying to distinguish between the sounds of the forest and my own pulsing heartbeat. The air had a chill, but not just from the night. It felt charged with something unseen, an energy that wrapped around me, urging me to move. But where was I supposed to go? "Mark," I whispered into the radio again, hoping for another crackle of reassurance. Nothing. Just silence that felt heavier than the dark surrounding me. A sudden crash echoed from deeper within the woods, followed by another. Panic surged through me. I turned sharply, scanning the trees, searching for any sign of movement. The shadows danced like angry spirits, taunting me. But now, there was something more. An unyielding pressure pushing against my mind, trying to guide my thoughts down a path I didn't want to follow. Ignoring the instinct to freeze, I started moving, taking cautious steps back toward where I thought the campsite might be. Each step felt wrong, like I was wandering through a bad dream. A part of me screamed to go back to the clearing, to confront the glowing figure. But the sound of branches snapping made my choice clear. I had to keep moving. Then, just ahead, a flicker of light caught my eye. It was faint, pulsing slowly, almost rhythmically. I moved toward it, unable to resist the pull, as if it were calling out to me. My feet quickened despite my better judgment. As I approached, I realized it was a fire, glowing brightly against the backdrop of the trees. Relief washed over me, but it was mixed with dread. The flames danced in an unnatural way, almost as if they had a life of their own. I could see figures sitting around it, but as I got closer, I froze. They weren't human. The shapes were warped, their features shifting like smoke, almost blending into the flames. The air felt thick again, vibrating with an undeniable frequency. They turned toward me, eyes that glowed like embers piercing through the darkness. Fear gripped my chest. I was standing at the edge of something I couldn't comprehend. Their mouths moved in silent whispers, and I felt the words reach me without sound. They pulled at my consciousness, promising understanding, but I didn't want to know. I stumbled back, away from the fire. My instincts kicked in, and I spun on my heel, moving as fast as I could manage. The trees felt alive again, branches reaching out like fingers as I dashed through the underbrush. I could hear them behind me now, soft laughter echoing in the night, taunting me as I fled. The forest twisted and turned, and I realized I was lost. I hadn't just run into darkness. I had plunged into a living maze. I could feel the breath again, clothes on my back, nipping at my heels. Just as I started to doubt if I would ever escape, I burst into another clearing. But this one was different. Massive stones jutted from the ground, inscribed with symbols that mirrored the glowing designs from before. This had to mean something. Then I saw it. At the center of the stones, another figure stood, much taller and clearer than the others, shrouded in golden light. It raised an arm toward me, almost beckoning. I didn't want to step forward, but my feet began moving again against my will, caught in the figure's pull. As I approached, the ground shook beneath me. I knew I was about to cross a line I couldn't uncross, but I had to know. Was this the end, or just the beginning? The figure grew larger as I stepped closer, the golden light flickering around it like a halo. I wanted to turn and run, but something held me there, a force stronger than fear. The air crackled between us, humming like a taut string, and I could feel my own heartbeat syncing with the vibrations. "What do you want?" I stammered, my voice barely above a whisper. Each word felt inadequate, lost in the emptiness surrounding us. The figure's arm remained outstretched, and I noticed its eyes, glowing spots that felt like windows to something vast and unfathomable. Then I saw it, something creeping at the edges of my vision. It was a shadow slipping from behind the stones, merging with the darkness around me. My instincts screamed at me to look away, to escape while I still could. But the golden figure's light filled me with a strange allure, and I couldn't fully pull back. A crack of thunder shattered the air unexpectedly, and the ground trembled more violently than before. The shadow darted closer, undulating, and my body reacted without permission. Every muscle tensed, every nerve alight with terror. The laughter from before echoed faintly again, reverberating off the stones, and I knew I wasn't alone. The joyous whispers from the fire returned, wrapping around my mind, pulling me into their careless embrace. They spoke in a language I couldn't comprehend but somehow understood. The words surged through me, a flow of images and feelings. They painted a picture of a world just beyond my reach, filled with light and promise, but I couldn't breathe. It all felt wrong. Stumbled back, breaking their hold, and my sanity snapped back into place. I turned, ready to run, but the shadow was right there, looming. Panic exploded in my chest. I had to move. I dashed back toward the maze of trees, pushing branches aside and forcing my legs to sprint. I could hear footsteps now, something rushing after me, quick and hungry. The shadows twisted, morphing into shapes that mocked me, my thoughts echoing back in distorted forms as I plunged deeper into the dark maze. I had to lose them. I ducked into a narrow passage between the trees, heart pounding furiously, breath hitching in my throat. That laughter surrounded me now, echoing and confounding. I could feel them getting close, those voices curling around me like smoke, urging me to stop, to turn, to embrace the inevitable. Then, just as hope began to dim completely, I saw it, a glimmer of light through the trees, flickering like a lighthouse beacon. I ran towards it, desperate for safety. But as I broke through the last line of trees, I found myself back in the first clearing, my campsite. The fire blazed, casting eerie shadows, but everything felt different. The glow was dimmer, the air heavy with an unknown weight. I stumbled back, chest heaving as I scanned the area. Where was Mark? The radio lay abandoned on the ground, cracked and silent. As I glanced up, the skies darkened, and the laughter faded, leaving a suffocating quiet. That's when I saw it, a figure standing at the edge of the clearing silhouetted against the flames. I couldn't tell if it was a friend or a foe. My heart sank, and dread washed over me. I was trapped once more, and this time, I didn't know if I would find my way back. The figure lurked just beyond the firelight, all sharp angles and shadows. I squinted, trying to make out details, but dread knotted in my stomach, and my heartbeat felt like a drum in my ears. I stepped forward cautiously, every instinct telling me to flee. "Mark!" I called out, my voice wavering. There was no answer. The figure didn't move, didn't speak. It just stood there, shrouded in darkness, like a statue brought to life from my worst nightmares. I glanced around the campsite, searching for something, anything that could help me. My flashlight lay at the edge of the clearing, and I hesitated, knowing I had to make a choice. The darkness was closing in, pulsing with that unsettling aura I had felt earlier. Taking a breath, I scooped up the flashlight and clicked it on. The beam cut through the shadows, revealing the outline of the figure clearer now. It was definitely not Mark. This person, or thing, wore a long coat that flared with the wind, but the face was obscured, like a mask made of the night itself. "Who are you?" I shouted, my voice shaking. The figure's head tilted slightly, and I felt all my weight shift backward. The laughter returned, faint yet chilling, as if it was coming from behind me. It was mocking, making my skin crawl. Before I could react, the figure took a single step forward, and instinct kicked in. I turned, running back towards the trees. The flashlight flickered with every stride, a pathetic beacon against the encroaching dark. I felt the pulse of something behind me, something menacing, as if it were keeping pace. Branches whipped against my arms, tearing at my shirt. I stumbled but pushed myself to keep moving, the laughter now echoing in my ears, intertwined with my ragged breaths. The air grew colder, and I knew I was getting nowhere fast. Suddenly, the darkness opened up, and I found myself in a small clearing. My heart sank when I realized it was another part of the park, completely unfamiliar. The trees loomed taller here, dense and daunting, and I felt the weight of a dozen eyes watching me. I glanced back, half expecting to see the figure trailing behind. Instead, I was met with silence. Nothing but the rustle of leaves, the chill in the air. Glancing around, I noticed something unusual, a faint illumination hovering near the ground. I crept closer, my curiosity pulling me in. It was a small orb of light glowing softly, pulsating gently like a heartbeat. My pulse quickened. I reached out instinctively, wondering if it would bring me comfort or danger. Just as my fingers brushed the light, it flared brighter and vanished. Startled, I stumbled backward. Then, in the sudden darkness, I heard it, a voice whispering my name, soft and inviting. It sent shivers down my spine. Lucy. That was not my name. My heart raced as realization hit. I needed to get out of here, but the way back was lost in a haze of terror. I turned to run, but the shadows shifted. I stood frozen as another figure emerged from the dark, this one distinctly familiar. Mark. But he looked different, his eyes vacant and unseeing. Lucy. I couldn't tell if it was him or something pretending to be him. Paralyzed by confusion and fear, I waited, knowing that whatever came next would shape the rest of my life. Then everything went dark. I gasped as the darkness folded around me like a heavy blanket. My senses sharpened, but there was nothing. just the thick, suffocating blackness. I strained to hear something, anything. Then, a weak light flickered back to life ahead of me. "Mark," I whispered. But no response came, only silence. The sound of crackling leaves and hushed branches filled the void, and I hesitated, my mind racing. Where was I? What had just happened? With a shaky breath, I moved toward the light, each step cautious. It flickered again, this time brighter, like it was trying to guide me. I reached out, hoping it was a sign, a friendly beacon cutting through the terror. My fingers grazed the edge of the illumination, and it pulsed warmly for a moment before it snapped out like a blown-out candle. I recoiled, heart pounding in my chest. This felt wrong. So wrong. How could something so beautiful feel so ominous? Suddenly, a rustling sounded behind me. Panic surged within me. I spun around. The darkness behind me felt alive, wrapping around me with a weight I couldn't ignore. I felt the urge to flee, but fear rooted me to the spot. Then there it was again, a voice whispering through the shadows. "Lucy." My heart dropped. How did it know my name? I began to back away, searching for the trees, the path, anything familiar. The figure of Mark was still there, just beyond my reach, but he didn't take a step closer. "Lucy," he repeated like a song on a broken record. "Mark, is that you?" I called out, my voice trembling. I needed it to be him. But his expression remained blank. It was like he didn't even know who I was. Just as I was about to yell for help, the world around me shimmered. Shapes began to form in the dark, shifting and merging like shadows dancing just beyond the fringes of my perception. I blinked, and suddenly the clearing transformed as if a curtain had been lifted. Before me stood a series of tall, crooked figures, unnaturally stretching toward the sky, their features hidden in twilight. Their whispers grew louder, a cacophony of voices swirling around me. I grasped for logic, for reasoning, but it slipped through my fingers like sand. "Help!" I yelled, desperate, but my voice was drowned out by their collective murmur. They seemed to sway, undulating in a rhythm that matched the pulsating energy of the orb that had vanished earlier. "Lucy?" Mark's voice came again, pulled from the chaos. I turned back to him, and in that instant I saw a flicker of warmth in his vacant eyes, followed by a shroud of darkness swallowing it whole. Then it dawned on me. Whatever this was, it wanted something from me. I could feel it, a pull into the unknown urging me to surrender. Before I could act, something cold grazed my shoulder. I flinched, and in the blink of an eye the figures surged forward, their whispers turning into screams. I bolted, instinct driving me as I pushed through the throng, branches clawing at my arms. I ran deeper into the woods, heart racing, mind screaming, praying for escape. But as I stumbled through the darkness, I couldn't shake the feeling that behind me, Mark, his lost eyes, was watching and waiting, and then I tripped, falling hard to the ground, the world around me spinning. Panic rose. I had to get up. I had to run. But just as I tried to push myself off the forest floor, a light flickered anew. That's when I saw it. A glimmering orb much larger than the last, hovering in front of me, bright and beckoning. It pulsed with a strange energy, calling me closer. I hesitated. What if it was a trap? But something deep inside me craved it. I couldn't shake the feeling that I had no choice. Whatever was lurking in the shadows was closing in, and maybe this was my only way out. And then the darkness whispered my name once more. I took a step closer to the orb, wrestling with my fear. The air around it felt charged, alive with energy. I reached out, my fingers trembling, ready to touch it. But then a sharp cry cut through the whispers, snapping me back to reality. "Lucy! Run!" Mark's voice echoed, desperate and urgent. I jerked my head toward the sound, but it was too late. The shapes in the darkness lunged at me, their cold hands clawing at my skin. I gasped and stumbled back, losing my balance. The orb blurred in my vision as I fell backward, the world swirling around me like a cyclone. I landed hard, the ground cold and unforgiving. For a brief moment everything felt still, then chaos. The murmurs transformed into angry screams. The figures hovered above me, their elongated shadows mixing with the darkness. I couldn't stay here. I had to get up. Just as I pushed myself onto my knees, I glimpsed something glinting in the dirt nearby, an old compass. I snatched it up. It trembled wildly in my grip, pointing in various directions like it couldn't decide which way to go. The orb flickered, battling for my attention. "Lucy, please!" Mark's voice was panicked, a muffled plea that tied my heart in knots. With a newfound determination, I glanced back at the compass. It steadied, finally pointing in one clear direction. As if on instinct, I followed it, the compass guiding me through the throng of figures. I ducked and weaved, dodging reaching hands and whispers that tugged at my mind, trying to confuse me. I moved as fast as I could, heart hammering against my ribcage. The woods felt alive, the branches reaching out like witchy fingers. Still, I trusted the compass. I hoped it would lead me to safety. Then, out of nowhere, a shape lunged at me. I screamed, scrambling sideways, and felt the grip of something icy catch the hem of my shirt. It tore, ripping fabric, but I broke free. Without looking back, I sprinted forward, my legs burning, gasping for breath. "Help me!" I cried again as I dashed through the trees. I was losing hope, my body felt heavy, the darkness closing in fast. Was I running towards safety or deeper into danger? Suddenly the trees opened up and I found myself in a clearing filled with fog. The orb flickered ahead and I rushed toward it. But as I reached out for the light, it pulsated violently, blinding me for a moment. When my vision cleared, I found myself surrounded by an enormous circle of the strange figures. They swayed in unison, chanting my name, their faces still shrouded in shadow. I spun around, heart racing. The compass dropped from my hand, the metal hitting the ground with a dull thud. The whispers intensified, drowning out everything else. My mind frayed and I felt the overwhelming urge to give in, to join the dance of shadows, to lose myself in their depths. But deep down, a sliver of resistance surfaced. I could not surrender. I had to fight. Then I noticed something at the center of the circle, a small, glimmering object. A pendant of sorts, shimmering just like the orb. My heart sank. Was it a part of this? Before I could think, I made a choice. I charged toward it. The figures shrieked, closing in. I stretched my hand forward, clawing for the light, not realizing the danger of my action until it was too late. As I touched the pendant, darkness enveloped me once more. Then everything went black. When I regained consciousness, I was sprawled on the cold forest floor, and the chaos was gone. The air was still, almost serene, as if the chaos had never touched this place. I blinked, disoriented, and pushed myself up cautiously. My body felt heavy, weighted down by fatigue and confusion. The world around me looked different now. The trees, once ominous sentinels, appeared muted and hazy. Wisps of fog curled elegantly around the trunks, and the sounds of the forest had become hushed, lost in a tranquil silence. I stood up slowly, heart pounding. Was it over? Had I truly escaped? Instinctively, I reached for my radio, but it was gone. That crushing wave of anxiety washed over me. Was I still being hunted? I strained my ears, listening intently. No whispers echoed, no shadows swirled. I felt both relieved and utterly alone. Then, as I gathered my bearings, a flicker of light caught my eye. I turned sharply and found that same shimmering orb hovering before me. It pulsed gently as though inviting me forward. I hesitated, recalling the horror from before, the figures that had danced with my mind. But this light felt different, less threatening, more like a beacon. I approached slowly, cautious but curious. As I reached out, the orb enveloped my hand in warmth. Suddenly the sensations flooded back. Whispers, laughter, shadows. But this time they were distant echoes, fading with every breath I took. The warmth seeped into me and pulled at my fears. I didn't feel alone anymore. It felt as if the light understood me, guiding me away from the past and toward something unknown. "Mark!" I shouted into the stillness, desperation mingling with uncertainty. No reply came, but the light flickered in response, swirling in patterns that felt almost like a dance, reassuring and rhythmic. Could I trust it? I followed the orb, stepping over roots and thickets, my anxiety easing as I moved away from the chaos. Each pulse of light felt like a heartbeat, urging me to push forward. I felt a strange sense of peace, though I recognized it wrapped itself in layers of uncertainty. Hours, or maybe minutes, passed, and I found myself at the edge of the forest. The tall trees parted like curtains, revealing a familiar path leading back to my cabin. I stepped through the threshold of the trees and the light dimmed, settling into a soft glow behind me as if the forest released a sigh of relief. But as I stood there, taking in the stillness of the park, questions swirled in my mind. Had I truly escaped? Why had I been drawn into the woods in the first place? I glanced back, half expecting to see shadows creeping around the bark. I quickly shook my head. Those remnants of fear and doubt only clawed at me. Was this a sign that it was all over, or merely a pause in a larger, ongoing dance with whatever had hunted me? The memories of those who had come before me, those who fell into the treacherous rhythms of the night, flashed in my mind. Though the night had changed me, I felt something else lingering, an almost electric tension, a connection that whispered deep in my mind. I was unsure what waited for me beyond the park, what weight carried inside me now. With weary resolve, I turned and walked towards my cabin. I felt the air shift, a breeze brushing against my skin, reminding me that things were never entirely what they seemed. The woods were not just a tapestry of trees. They held secrets, lingering echoes of those who had come before, and maybe even of those who would follow. I'd never truly understand what happened that night, nor would I ever be able to shake the feeling of being watched. I moved to a different city soon after, hoping distance would dull the lingering whispers, yet sometimes, just before sleep, I could almost hear them still. And every so often, as I gazed toward the horizon, I wondered if the light would call me back again.